Hello, I just want to share a few links in interesting ones in regards to alchemy and Rosicrucians. And firstly, we have this unknown author, originally published 1785, and one shortly after, but the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians and how it's an alchemical text. But especially it's written at a time when symbolism was much more important and better understood. Now, it's written in this Germanic type of font, but there are a few things, you can get translations. But if you, from this link, you can follow it through and get some translations of it as well. But when you scroll through, so you'll find it'll be popping up. So every once in a while, such as there, you'll find a more modern English font. And it just pops up every once in a while. Okay, so Hermetis, again, in this different font. And there are these words that pop up. So I'm thinking that they would change the font. There's some information in there, but in regards to alchemy as well. So, for instance, fire, and we have again like the four elements. So, fire, Luft, as in Luftwaffe, air, for instance, but prima materia. Oh, okay, rebus, for instance, over here, and how that connects to corpus. And so it's full of this text, and you can get English translations of it, but a recurring theme. So, for instance, these three stars here, what we have is a symbol for Mercury, the planet, but also the god, or Hermes Trismegistus, or the Egyptian equivalent would be Thoth. And that's Mercury. And we also have the symbol for sulfur, and we have the symbol for salt. Now, another link I'll be putting in here is this one to the translation and the work of Isaac Newton, the alchemist. And so up here we have text, but for instance, if you click on symbols, for instance, it would also give you now what we have again, the Mercury symbol, that first Mercury, and we have sulfur, and we have again like the circle with a line through the center being salt. So again, Mercury, sulfur, and salt. And so yeah, so you can get some translations through there. Now again, Mercury, salt, and sulfur, and the same that is that's tartar. And again, you can use this Isaac Newton. Now it's worth noting that Isaac Newton, along with Heinrich Kunraf and others, also studied the Emerald Tablet, and that's a very interesting, because it's a bit of an enigma, but various translations and people who have worked on it. Michael Meyer is now Crowley, okay, but Newton, because Crowley was more in I don't go much for him, but these earlier Bacon, Meyer, and Newton, because of their interest in the alchemical aspects of it rather than the more mystical aspect. Okay, Hermes Trismegistus, but this is just a wiki page there's a lot of stuff on the Emerald Tablet, but Isaac Newton was in there as well. But if we go back, and so these symbols in there, again, this page is an excellent dictionary. So we also have the descriptions of it, but also you can do search by symbols as well. So that's a good page. But again, you'll just see the same. It's a Hermetic text. It's a scientific text, embedded also with this sort of religious, spiritual, mystical, if you want to call it, but at the essence of it. For instance, tincture, or the double-headed eagle, and again, Mercury, sulfur, and salt. The moon, silver, and gold, the sun. The alchemical wedding. Now this one, is that cinnabar? I forget. This is also, anyway, there's some interesting, again, you'll find this common theme to the tetragrammaton, the name of God, as in Kabbalist tradition. and also, for instance, like Leo there, and you'll find various is that Scorpio, and these, so the Sun, Earth, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, and Jupiter as well, being connected in there, and well, again, it's that Rosicrucian. Now these are also connected to the four elements, for instance, and we also see the mercurial sign, sulfur, blending with Mercury, and also with salt there as well. But you find, again, just if you do scroll through, even with a nice flower of life, seed of life emerging there, again with the heavenly bodies around there. Now, again, Lucifer, I mentioned there as in light, and there are a few interesting connections, but it's a little bit. Now, this is the 1788 publication, and again, if you scroll through the text, you will find amongst the more Germanic font, there are words that will jump out that are written in the more modern font, let's call it, Magnesia. So when you see the F, that's S in the old script. So it's not Magnifia, it's Magnesia, for instance, Valentinus. And you'll see, like, again, Mercury and Mercurius will pop up a bit. And it could be, because of the way these guys, so Mercury. And they had to, maybe not by 1788, they could be a little bit more open, but in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, you're getting burned at the stake for talking about these type of things. And so they come from a tradition where trade secrets were not only kept to protect the trade, but also, well, to protect your head as well. And again, you can see, if you just go through your standard YouTube comments referring to anything like this, you'll get an idea of the misunderstanding and all the open hatred and denunciation of these things, because they attach things to these that it's just, it's not based on what the origin is. Now, a sword can be used for evil, a sword can be used for good, and that's how this needs to be applied. So everyone who was a Hermeticist is not automatically good, but they're not automatically evil as well. So, for instance, the number 666 will appear again. Now, immediately, again, standard YouTube comments, that's the number of the beast. Well, firstly, the number of the beast, if you actually read in Revelations, it's a human number. So, no, it's not as simple as that. But also in, I think it's Kings 2, Solomon collected 666 talents of gold. So, also to Pythagorean knowledge, it's 666 is a lot more information in there, and again, it's just cherry picking a certain quote and not really putting it into context. That's just in Revelations. But then if you look at it earlier, now even this, well, these are Hermetic. Now we write chemistry in a very specific way. We do our maths in we have a very specific way. Back then, plus, minus, and divide weren't as universally used symbols as what they are now. So even things were done differently, and a lot of what we take for granted as symbolism or words and emblems now we had a little bit different meaning and different origins back then. Now, even just as an artistic expression, it's an interesting one. Again, 666. And really, to understand these, you need to have a grasp of the science of the time. What were the Hermeticists? Well, who was Hermes? That's again this weights and measures. It was they were gods of knowledge, god of science, and these types of things. Again, tincture being one of these operations. An extract, like laudanum is probably the most famous one, where they would put opium into alcohol, and that was sort of a bit of a rage a couple hundred years ago. Ignis, fire; aqua, water; terra, earth; air. Fire, water, earth, and air. And these being sort of, again, the four sort of basic elements underlying a lot of this, the Rosicrucians, alchemical wedding, you could call it, well, weights and measures as well. So, for instance, Cleopatra the Alchemist was a famous lady alchemist from 3rd century BC, and she was famous for the alembic, but she also, one of her surviving books is on weights, literally on weights and measure, and that's what Hermes got, or Thoth in Egyptian, that was what their role was, and when it comes to science, well, that's just the underlying theme. I know I rattle on a lot about it, but that's, that's the unspoken thing when it comes to a lot of this, when it comes to Hermeticism and alchemy on there. You just don't find this aspect talked about by those so-called, again in the dark. So you have a double vesica and the Lucifer, the light. Lucifer transfers to the light bringer. For instance, in Adam and Eve's story, the snake actually told the truth. If you actually read it, the snake told the truth, and what he said was actually truthful. And again, but the snake's being cast as a deceiver, as the devil. It's not. Again, it's not. That's not really necessarily true. Okay, we also have there is the shin, fire, and also so the expression as above, so below. You can be found, for instance, in the translation, that which is below is like that which is above. As above, so below, this Hermetic thing. This was an Isaac Newton translation of the Emerald Tablet. Heinrich Kunrath as well. I've been featuring him recently, but he's worth looking at. Okay, so these links will be in a description. And again, just even as an artistic, they're pretty nice. The sun, the moon, the red and the white flower, salt, mercury and sulfur, as well as these other alchemical symbols. That was before the periodic table of elements. And the symbols are still used, but this was the chemistry of the time, and it was used in inks, glazing for pottery, glass making, metallurgy, everything in vegetable, mineral. Okay, what's the Yep. So these, you notice the preacher's hand as well, the 2 fingers as well, that papal symbol, the key, the silver and gold key of the Pope, the triple crown, are also ancient symbols, but connected to alchemy in these Rosicrucian symbols. So, okay, these links will be in the description. Anyway, for instance, if you want this picture, you just right-click it, view image, and then view image, right-click it again, copy image, and then you can just save it to your desktop, chuck it in a folder, and store it. So it's worth, just if you're unfamiliar with how to download these pictures, so you can just get the whole book that way. You can download it as PDF as well, and there are translations of it into the English. The Columba and the Blackbird, these birds of alchemy. Alright, so with those, these links will be in a description. This is it's alchemy, and there's a science behind it, and those who would seek to keep us in ignorance have been the ones who have pretty much demonized this, and also made a career off it. David Icke, I'm looking at you, and also others have tried to, you need to study these things. You're not going to just take an hallucinogenic and understand this. I'm no fan of McKenna at all. Essentially, I think that's not only untruthful, it's also essentially lazy, and it comes from that whole period of basically postmodernism, where it's everything these things don't come. We do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And I'm not against a bit of hallucinogenics every once in a while, but I just don't. It's sobriety is what will, and discipline is what will get you the truth, not the easy route. If it comes in 15 minutes, it's not worth having. Okay, links in the description. Cheers, have a good one.